Democracy doesn't need a funeral, it needs a rebirth. That was it, really. I'm leaving now. Having said that, recent polls have pointed to this number. 42% of young people around the world, they think that under certain circumstances, an authoritarian regime might be an acceptable thing. Now, while this is eye-opening, it should not confuse us from the real matter. Now, the real matter is that a lot of these young people don't feel this authoritarian temptation. They don't feel the need, of an authoritarian regime, but most of them are disappointed with the way in which democracy works. Right now, and I think we can all understand this, right? When institutions stop delivering, when the confidence gap between the people and the political parties grows immensely, when inequality reaches a level of immorality, when the political classes seem to only be interested in people like you and I at election time, then is when, of course, people start taking distance from democracy. But let me propose to you maybe an original approach. All right, now let's just think that democracy is not a sacred system. All right, now democracy doesn't come down on us from the sky, even if some faces of presidents are carved in mountains, or even if we regard constitutions as sacred books that cannot be touched. Let me remind you, constitutions are just books, okay, that can be rewritten, and choices, institutional choices are the most important thing that we could do for democracy. And taking on the beautiful talk of our previous speaker, I think it's tremendously selfish what we could do for democracy to actually make it better. Now, keep this idea in mind. Democracy is not a miracle. It's not a miracle, and it should not be treated as such. All right, now, in fact, all right, now, the good news is that democracy is a design, and what we can decide, we can redecide. And in a nutshell, that's what political scientists do. I know that a lot of people do not know what political scientists do. And I've heard this joke the other day that it was an interesting joke. It's like, why the political scientists cross the road? Okay, it was like to reach the middle and meet the middle voter, okay, which is obviously a bad political joke. Now, let me give you an example of institutional design. All right, now, some of you might know that electoral systems are the most manipulative elements in the political system. Now, a lot of you do not actually question the electoral results. You do not question the translation of votes onto seats. But let me tell you that there is no single democracy that has the same way of translating votes onto seats in the world. All right, now, so imagine that there's 100 people here. Okay, now, luckily we have a few more. All right, now, but for the sake of clarity, let's just think about 100. Now, imagine that 40 of them, they would vote for a certain party called Party A. All right, now, 35 of them, close enough, they're going to vote for Party B. And then there's another remaining 25% of people that will vote for Party C. Now, nothing is written when we need to allocate power here, when we need to transfer, all right, now, institutional choices onto real power. But what we do know is that under one system that we call winner-takes-all system, also known as Westminster, all right, now, that we might be familiar to you, okay, Party A gets all the power. All right. Now, there's some advantages about Party A getting all the power. Okay. Now, it's executive, it's fast. All right. Now, you don't have to share power, you don't have to share accountability. All right. Now, and it's actually good for business. Everything's clear. All right, now that would be winner takes all right, now sort of system. Now, under a different case, party A, B, and C, they will be sharing power. And this is what we call a power sharing system, also known as consensus. All right, and here you can think about coalition coalition power, coalition governments. All right, coalition governments, they do obviously have the difficulty of having to agree between different parts of the coalition, but it is again now a different way of counting votes onto seats. All right, now same votes, different outcome. Okay, it really depends on the design. So let me go a little further than this. Okay, my name is Oscar. I'm a political scientist, and I spent a good deal of time thinking about a question that might sound a little technical, a little nerdy. Is like why some democracies and some societies, they channel conflict better than others. Now, let me also remind you that most people are asked to believe in a system that very few people know how it is assembled. This is an important matter. We are told to believe, or we are told to focus actually on scandals. The good thing and the good news is that, and this is the first idea I want you to keep and take away from my talk here, is that there is no single model of running a successful democracy. No single model. All right, now, in fact, all right, now, democracy does not come in one single formula. All right, now, it doesn't come in one single model. It comes in different versions. All right, now, of, different waves of institutions fitting society. All right, now, let me give you another example, and then you might understand this very well. Now, United States is a democracy, not doing so well lately. All right, now, Chile is also a democracy. All right, now, India is the most populated democracy in the planet. All right, now, Japan is also a democracy. It's not on the screen, but it is a democracy. All right, now, New Zealand is a small democracy. All right, now, that, and also South Africa is a democracy. Tunisia is a democracy. Panama is a democracy. Colombia is a democracy. Canada, if it's true that Canada really exists, is a democracy. All right, now, so what all these democracies have in common, you know what it is? It's the name. Democracy. All right, now all these democracies, they actually ran power onto society in a very different way. All right, now if you remember this example of 100, okay, now each of these democracies, they redistribute power and seats in a very different way. Okay, now some democracies have one chamber, New Zealand. Some democracies have two chambers, Germany, Bundestag and Bundesrat. Okay, now very few people do know about why a second chamber might be good or not. Now remember, some democracies, they do have a president, and some other democracies, they do have a prime minister. Now the differences are very important. All right, now, and our duty as political scientists is to educate the people and to let people know what are the risks, what are the pros, what are the cons, where are the consequences of some of these dramatic institutional decisions. All right, now, for instance, as we do know well, now presidentialism is a system in which you cannot get rid of the president unless the president resigns. Not many presidents resigned. Okay, now, or they get impeached. All right, now, what's good about it? Stability. Granted, all right, now that presidentialism relies on one core idea: good presidents. Bad presidents are not very good for presidentialism. Let's just put it that way. Okay, now, and I'll give you an example in just a minute that you'll be like, whoa. Parliamentarism, on the other hand, all right, and remember, these are choices. There's nothing in a society, specific society, that will be tending to presidentialism or channeling power towards parliamentarism. Now, parliamentarism is based on the idea that you elect a prime minister. A prime minister is less powerful than a president. Why? Because it can be voted out at any time during the term. All right, now here's, okay, now not here, okay, now here, not here, but here is the number, okay? Now, so I just move in a couple of slides, okay? I might actually be back in a minute. Now, think about this, most people do not think about this, and I was myself a little surprised when I looked at the numbers. The United States of America, in fact, Americans invented presidentialism. They had 46 presidents in the last 250 years. All right, now that means that, each president, except very few cases because they were assassinated, 4 presidents, or because they were impeached or about to be impeached. Okay, now, and Italy is a parliamentary system that had, since 1945, all right, now pretty much the same number of prime ministers. All right, an average of a prime minister, all right, now would be 1 year and 3 months in Italy since 1945. Now, this would give you a very good idea, maybe a good visual of the differences between presidentialism, maybe stable, all right, unless you have a bad president, okay, and then the stability, it gets a little long, and it gets a little never-ending, okay, or then, okay, now prime ministers that can be voted out at any point. But let me now, we'll go back, all right, now onto another idea that I want to just leave here with you today. Now, remember that institutions are choices. Right now, and choices are human choices. Right now, and most of our democratic systems, except the very new systems, which is where we can perhaps act on a little bit. Now, most of our current democracies were created for the time, all right, now, of stronger parties. They were created for the time of slower media, or no media whatsoever. Okay, now it was created for a time of clear ideological loyalties, all right, now, which today we know that they are blurred out there, and party volatility is very much, okay, now there. They were also created for a time in which politics were encountered periodically, almost every 4 years. Now the situation today with fragmentation, with permanent communication, with actually multiculturality, with all these migrations, they force us to think that it's not that democracy is sick. It's just that institutions do not serve the purpose for which they were created. All right? Now, think about other systems that we interact with on a normal basis. Okay? Now, think about a school curriculum. Okay, it gets updated, it gets changed. Okay, think about transport networks. They get upgraded, they get readjusted. All right, now think even our phones, that they get updates at the most annoying times, like of our lives. All right, now, so another idea is that there's, guys, no drama. Fifth Republic in France. People are talking about going to the Sixth Republic. What is the drama? The 4 previous republics did not work, did not deliver. Liberté, égalité, and fraternité, presumably. All right, now we're just going to be moving on to that. Italians, as we just saw, they are masters at institutional change. All right, now, and of course, Italians are now on the Second Republic. Why not to go on the Third Republic? All right, now, so these are just little fragments, okay, now of ideas. Now, something that then I was thinking, how can I make this intelligible for you? Okay, now. The difference comes here when you hear people complaining. You don't hear people complaining in a way of like, okay, now I am worried about constitutional rigidity. Okay, now you are not in the supermarket and you hear something saying, I suspect the mismatch, okay, between territorial pluralism and executive incentives. Now, most people, when they don't feel that democracy delivers, okay, they actually quit on it. All right, now I think that approach is actually wrong. All right, now first of all, we should not consider democracy as something absolutely untouchable, sacred, God's given. All right, now because it's tremendously socially constructed, it's tremendously human. Okay, and second of all, right, now we should not actually be now too light at proposing institutional reform and institutional choices. All right, now, so what I'm talking about pretty much, all right, now, is that what does redesign actually mean? All right, now, this would be the question. Okay, now, and my answer to you, all right, now, would be asking better questions. All right, now, so when you guys are asked, and when you are told democracy sucks, then you have to ask, where does it suck? Okay, now democracy is broken. Where is democracy broken? All right, now parties do not represent us. Okay, now why do parties do not represent us? Only asking better questions, we could have better answers. All right, that again, being selfish, all right, now we can actually fix democracy, because I think it is a system which requires every single one of us to be tremendously selfish. Okay, I'm almost done, all right, now, but and here's another thought for you that I think it makes a lot of sense, and oftentimes we don't have the peace of mind to be together like today, all right, now, and think about this. Democracy should not be treated as fixed when society isn't. Right? Okay, now, I mean, it's not rocket science. All right, now, society is alive, and so democracy is alive. And it should be treated as a living organism. All right, democracy is sensitive. We know because we have plenty of metrics. All right, now, plenty of organizations that are measuring how well democracy is doing. We do have the indicators. We do have the variables. All right, it's alive. Why should our institutional design not be alive? All right, now, two. All right, now, and actually match the trade-offs between society and institutions. I'm almost done, guys, but think about this, and this is another idea for you to take away from my talk today. Now, democracy is not finished. Democracy is unfinished, and that is not its flow. It is actually its promise. Thank you so much.